comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic alongside Katie Greifeld. We're counting you down to the closing bell. You're here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with our friends Scarlett Fu and Bailey Lipschultz in today for Tim Stenevik and Carol Masser. Welcome to our audiences in full across all of our Bloomberg platforms on a day where equities once again, Scarlett, are in the green on the day and on the week.
Yeah, the path of least resistance is for stocks to move higher, or in the case of the last few days, inch higher at this point. There was a little bit of wobbling. We saw Microsoft shares extend their losses on that OpenAI headline, but it does look like a fourth straight day of gains here for the S&P 500.
Yeah, absolutely here. And we should just reiterate that OpenAI headline, of course, with Sam Altman basically being forced out. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Rachel Metz reporting that the board had undertaken a review process of, I guess, something, and they basically determined that they weren't confident going forward here and leaving him at the helm of that company.
We concluded that ChatGPT might have written the press release because it was kind of hard to understand.
I don't know. It was a little bit brutal. You read through the lines there, and again, it made it just very clear that this wasn't Sam Altman's decision. Really interesting to think about the ripple effects here. Obviously, Microsoft being one of them, but you think about the Fortune 500 companies, 90% of them are building on OpenAI, so it's a very systemically important company as well.
And this was someone who was very much at the forefront of AI and talking to politicians about what this application could actually do. So I'm also interested to see what this means in the entire AI community with Sam Altman getting the boot at his company.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should point out we don't have a lot of details about exactly what the board took issue with, but I think as Bailey alluded to here, I think everyone wants to know whether it dovetails at all with the rest of the AI space, or this is something very specific to OpenAI and ChatGPT. We get the closing bells here in New York. Green all around the screen, though we should point out the gains are relatively modest. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up by about 2 points as we wait for the numbers to settle. That's going to be good enough to push it into the green, but we're talking about a tenth of a percent gain on the day. The S&P 500 up for a second week, up today about a tenth of a percent, or about 5 to 6 points, while the NASDAQ is higher by about 12 points or a tenth of a percent. But let's talk about the Russell 2000, Scarlett, here. A 1.3% gain on the day, more outperformance relative to the broader market. And I was just taking a look on a weekly basis. The Russell 2000 outperforming the S&P 500 on a weekly basis by more than 3 percentage points. That's the widest margin to the upside for the Russell versus the S&P going back to early 2022.
Yeah, something to definitely watch for. I'm looking at the S&P 500 right now, and you have 328 stocks higher, 171 down. So clearly the tilting is to the upside.
And you take a look at how it breaks down on the industry group level. You do have more green than red, but again, it was a pretty quiet day in the markets. But energy up at the top, up by more than 2%. We know that crude oil bouncing back a little bit right now. 4 straight weeks of losses, though, entering a bear market yesterday, but bouncing around right now. Retail also having a good day. Transportation and banks as well. Then you go down the list. What's not doing well? Media and entertainment, household products, and then software and services leading the rear, down by about 0.9%.
And before, Scarlett, you get into some of the movers, I just want to correct myself. I did say that the S&P 500 had gained for a second straight week. It is indeed a third straight week of gains on the S&P, Scarlett.
All right, let's take a look at some of those retailers that Katie highlighted. We'll start with Gap, GPS, rallying the most since June of 2020, up more than 30% to $17.85. Its first full quarter under the new CEO, Richard Dixon, seems to be one that investors like because it reported better than expected third quarter results. Comp sales at Old Navy unexpectedly rising. So that was a little bit of a surprise given that Athleta is really the growth engine of Gap, but that didn't happen this past quarter. Gap, though, is a shadow of its former self with sales contracting in 6 of the last 8 quarters
When's the last
overall.
time you've been in a Gap, Scarlett?
I have not been in one in forever because the one that is across the street or was across the street from the Bloomberg office closed during the pandemic, and I haven't been in one since.
Yeah,
So did the Banana Republic. I love Banana
Yes,
Republic.
exactly. Part of the Gap empire or former empire. Another big gainer of the day was Ross Stores, the best performer in the S&P 500. You could see they're closing better than 7%, touching the high since May of 2021. It had a beat and raise quarter. It did strike a cautious tone for this quarter, which is fairly consistent with what we've heard from a lot of retailers, including Walmart. But analysts still say that off-price is a very strong segment and will continue to gain market share from department stores and specialty retailers. Anyone go to Ross Stores here?
No, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in. I mean, I did go to one like way back when. And it just wasn't really my bag, but I see the appeal.
You're not a treasure hunter?
I am not. No, not at all. My wife goes to like TJ Maxx every other day, I feel like. So she brought home like this pot the other day. I was like, we don't need another pot. She's like, but it was on sale. I was like, everything's on
Everything's
sale.
on
Can't
sale
argue
there.
with that.
Yeah. All right, let me just round up the last gainer here. It's Expedia after Evercore upgraded the stock to outperform. An analyst there says the stock is at a fundamental inflection point with revenue growth set to accelerate next year and margins set to expand. By the way, Expedia is already up 48% so far this year, today ending up higher by 5%.
I just want to point out that Ross Stores is more than 7 times the size of Gap. So when you're thinking about
Whoa.
retailers that matter, keep that in
That's
mind.
great context.
But in a week that, as Romaine mentioned, third weekly gain for the S&P 500, a number of underperformers. Worst performer in the S&P was Applied Materials, dropping 4%. This coming after a report that a U.S. criminal investigation for allegedly violating export restrictions to China. So it bounced back from those lows, but the impact of that probe overshadowing earnings that really beat analyst expectations across the board, gave a strong guidance. Stock's still up more than 50% year to date, but a big lag for Applied Materials on a day that, for the most part, you saw semiconductor stocks trading higher. Among the worst performers, also in the S&P 500, Bath and Body Works, guys. This is a company that had a lot of pull it forward in demand during COVID. Right now, dropping more than 3% after third quarter sales decline. Warning revenues also going to drop year over year in the fourth quarter. Analysts calling out consumer spending slowing and how they're showing greater pressure into the year end. And again, that coming after 2 years where everyone was doing something to get their hands on soap.
On soap. Just before we move on to what's happening in the yield space on the day and on the week, Bailey, I do want to go back to that OpenAI story with Sam Altman being removed by the board as CEO. Microsoft, of course, the primary investor in this company, out with a statement saying that it stands behind OpenAI, that it is committed to the company, and that it has a long-term partnership with the company. That's all we know right now. Once again, the headline that we broke just a little while ago is that Sam Altman out as CEO of the company that he co-founded, and his co-founder, Greg Brockman, who was chairman of the board, has been also stepped down from the board, though he is still going to remain with the company. I do want to go back to what happened in the yield space because it was another wild day here. We talk about, I guess, that relentless rally, and it continued here. It was a mixed bag on the day here. You see the yield on the 2-year yield up about 6 basis points, basically the 10-year unchanged on the day. But on a weekly basis here, we're talking about drops in the double digits in terms of basis points, about 17 lower on the 30-year yield, 21 basis points lower on the week for the 10-year yield.
And I know that we've seen a huge rally when it comes to the bond market, particularly, of course, all eyes on the benchmark 10-year yield. But I think some perspective is important here. I mean, you think about where we entered the year, it was a heck of a lot lower, below 4% right now. Of course, we got below 350 earlier this year. So the fact that we're still meaningfully above 4%, you think about what that means for some of the businesses out there who are facing their maturity walls, refinancing risks, et cetera, that have to tap the bond market, that don't have a choice. And that's painful.
It is painful, but there's a lot more interest rate volatility to come given what we've seen. I'm excited about what's to come next week because the poster child of AI.
It's a holiday shortened week.
It's a holiday shortened week, but also AI poster child NVIDIA will be reporting results.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting week, too, because we also talk, I mean, we should also point out this is typically a low volume week, obviously, because of the Thursday being a holiday and then everyone taking off Friday. So I do wonder what the market reaction is going to be to a stock that is already, up 200 and something percent. And like, what can they say, Scarlett, that's really going to like provide an upward catalyst?
Another 3-digit % increase in sales, maybe?
Yeah.
They're buying OpenAI. I don't know. something crazy. I don't know.
Guys, I just want to point out that the NASDAQ is about 3 points off of its year high. So as you mentioned, Romaine, NVIDIA is the fourth largest holder or the fourth largest member of the NASDAQ 100. Granted, they beat earning or revenue by 20% last quarter and moved 0.1%.
Yeah.
But if this company gets moving higher, we are going to have 52-week highs going into the holiday.
Yeah, it's certainly the leader in this market. I mean, hands down. So it'll be interesting to see how much juice it's got left. I should point out, too, we get a lot of other earnings, including from some of the retailers like Nordstrom, Abercrombie & Fitch, Urban Outfitters, as well as some other tech companies like HP Inc., as well as Autodesk.
Yeah, all those specialty retailers who are going to be losing market share to Ross Stores and TJX, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, but then you saw the Macy's results, and I do wonder. I mean, are department stores still kind of just? I mean, I don't want to say they're back, but are they maybe? Did we sort of call their death maybe a little bit too prematurely?
I mean, people go there, they check out the displays, they look at the holiday
They
decorations.
do the perfume samples,
Yeah.
you know, speaking for myself.
Is that what you do for you every night you go out?
Just smells great, yeah.
They hang out with the personal shopper,
You know,
some
you're
influence.
supposed to actually buy something,
No.
Katie, after they spray it on you.
No, absolutely
You know.
not.
You just move on.
That's what I use Amazon for.
You take a picture of it and then you go home.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I mean, those are the big events next week, right? I don't know, Scarlett. I mean, I know you love Fed speak, but I think the Fed members, I hope, are on vacation next week.
Yeah, I think they could take a break.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay. I think we know what they're gonna say anyway.
Take a beat, yeah.
Take a beat. All right, guys, that does it for us. Our cross-platform coverage of the market close on Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube. We'll be back on Monday at the same time, same place.